Good evening. My name is Frederick Jackson Turner. I was one of the first important historians in the United States of America. I published a book called The Significance of the Frontier in American History. In this book, I explain my personal feelings toward America's new frontier, which I believed there wasn't one anymore. The reason why I said this is because we had left Europe behind, and our unique qualities came from the foreigners and immigrants. However, the white man's burden, Native Americans, had no importance and were just in our way. America was seen as having individualism, adventure, and advancement. However, that was far from true. Foreigners would see this false hope of the American dream, and that is why we had two great waves of immigration in the 19th and 20th century. The first great wave of immigration was in 1820 to 1880. This was called the Northwest European Wave. It consisted of mostly Germans and British, as well as Canadians. These immigrants were looked upon as being easy to assimilate. They were Protestant, they spoke English, and most importantly, they were white. There was also Irish, Chinese, and Africans coming as well, but they weren't in big numbers, so they weren't a big issue to worry about. However, there was a second great wave of immigration that was from 1880 to 1930. These immigrants were mostly from Southeast Europe. There were large amounts of Italians, Russians, Irish, and most importantly, the Jewish. These immigrants were looked on as being hard to assimilate because they could not speak English. They weren't Protestant, and mostly, they weren't white. However, some could easily get away with looking like a normal white man. America tried to set laws and rules against these specific foreigners, but all it did was give a loophole to those who looked white, and made it worse for the blacks and the Jews. However, the blacks did have it worse.
Hey, my name is Jack Johnston, and I was the first black heavyweight champion in boxing. I definitely think that I made a huge difference in American history. In 1865, white America had no civil rights, and the only people who were allowed to vote or have equal rights were white males who were American, or white men who could speak English and were Protestant. The South created black codes, stating that blacks were not equal to whites. I was born in Texas. In 1878, I started to train in boxing, and eventually the whites let me go for the heavyweight championship, and I got the title. I felt like I lifted black America, and I gave them hope. However, white America did not like that too much because of how I was. I was dating white women, living in white neighborhoods, and driving white cars. They tried everything to get me out of society's eye. They tried beating me out with a previous champion. They tried getting me in trouble with the law. Nothing would work. They eventually pulled me down by having me arrested for dating a prostitute. Although I suffered the consequences of racism, it created a domino effect. More blacks were standing up for themselves, and eventually led to many other black athletes being able to play in the professional leagues, such as Jackie Robinson, who was able to cause the military to desegregate after seeing him, a black man, on a white baseball team. There was even a man by the name of Levi Pearson who risked losing everything to fight for black schools in America. He ended up losing all of his most valuables and was not able to make a stable income for a while. But black schools were able to get a better education. Things started to look up for the black community. Even though racism and segregation were still prominent, we were still fighting for our rights. Meanwhile, another group of minorities were able to make their way to the top in a different way.
My name is Harry Warner, and I was an American studio executive, one of the founders of the Warner Brothers Entertainment Corporation, or for short, the Warner Brothers. If you don't know, it's a huge American motion entertainment company. However, I'm not here to tell you about the company. I'm here to tell you about how movies and cinema created the America we know today. I was raised Jew, and I came from a Jewish family, so naturally, not everybody liked us, especially not Christians. A lot of Jews didn't like the East. Because of this, a lot of us moved to the West, try and start making motion pictures to make money. Finally living the American dream, you know? We're making it in life. The first films were about accomplishing that American dream. Very commonly, you'd see it in a lot of those old Wild West movies. There was always the American hero versus those evil foreigners. Movies that came out would always have to do with what's happening in our history, such as when America finally created the nuclear weapons. Film industry loved the apocalypse. Some would feature giant robots coming to kill us all, or even movies where the radiation turned ants into huge and evil and attacked us all. Another, China terrified the U.S. and turned it communist. Film industries started to create films about evil communist spies. America had always relied on the cinema to be their way of relaxation, but in reality, the film industry truly controlled America and their emotions towards certain topics. And us as a film industry have helped shape our history.